Hi friends, happy Friday. I hope everybody has had a good week so far. I'm excited to talk to you guys about this chapter. This is the second to last chapter in the book. Next week is the final chapter and the conclusion. So, hooray for sticking with it this far, regardless of if you've read every page, if you've read 5 pages, if you've watched 2 videos, or this is the first one. It doesn't matter, guys. I'm just proud of us. I think it's really cool that we did this. And I'm excited to finish it up with you guys next week. So let's talk about chapter 5. This has been my favorite so far because I think this is just really super valuable to goal setting, to life satisfaction in general. It's all about values. A value a day keeps self-sabotage away is her clever little title for the chapter. So Dr. Judy opens this chapter really just driving home the importance of making sure that your goals and your values are connected. I kind of wish she had started with this in the very beginning, but I'm just glad she's addressing it now. And she talks about the distinction between 2 different kinds of happiness, which I hadn't really heard it described this way before, and it makes a lot of sense, and it's actually been a really helpful insight for me into thinking about self-sabotage in a different way. So she talks about, and I'm probably going to mispronounce this, there's 2 types. The first is hedonic, which you may have heard some variation of that word, like hedonistic happiness, which is simply the pursuit of pleasure and good feelings. And on the flip side of that, the avoidance or the absence of bad feelings. So pursuing that kind of happiness, she talks about how that is really a setup for self-sabotage, because anytime you may have a goal or, a desire for your life that forces you into a painful or uncomfortable situation in order to achieve that goal, that like hedonic happiness desire is going to want to push you away from the discomfort. That's the self-sabotage, right? Is thinking like, I don't want to do this right now. This is uncomfortable. I need to avoid it, and then I'll be happy. Of course, the flip side of that is you don't grow, you don't change, you get stuck in the same patterns. But because we're avoiding those uncomfortable feelings, it can almost be like we're tricking ourselves into thinking, well, I'm happy because I'm not uncomfortable. But that's a very shallow kind of happiness that doesn't really lead to overall life satisfaction. So the second kind, this is the word I'm probably mispronouncing, but I think it's eudaimonic, maybe. I'm not exactly sure how to say it. But eudaimonic happiness is the kind where you are pursuing growth as a person and self-actualization. You've probably seen another word I don't know how to say, Maslow. However, the hierarchy of needs, the pyramid, where self-actualization is at the top, she references that and talks about how our most basic needs are at the bottom, but the higher you get on the pyramid, the higher, the more life satisfaction you can achieve, and that self-actualization is at the top, and that's where we talk about pursuing goals, and which often involve facing discomfort and difficult things to get there. So values come in because you have to make sure that what you're pursuing is related to your values, because if you don't, you're not going to have the tenacity to push through the uncomfortable parts. You're going to give up and quit because it's not truly that important to you. And I can relate to that a lot. Core values have been a huge thing for me. Just over the past year, I actually kind of really discovered my core values and have been like thinking of them more and holding them in mind when I try to set goals and just do things in life. And I want to get into that a little bit later, but I can relate to that feeling of continually feeling like I was setting goals that seemed on the surface really good. They made sense. They were logical. I saw people that I really admired and looked up to doing those same things. And I thought like, well, I really, they seem like they're really happy and they're really fulfilled, and I would like to emulate that. So I should just be doing those same things that they're doing. And then I would set a goal, and then I either wouldn't get very far, or like I wouldn't even work on it at all. It would just kind of like be a goal floating around in the back of my mind that I would never really address. And that was such a frustrating pattern because I thought, to myself, I'm so lazy, or I'm so unmotivated, or I'm so unorganized. What's wrong with me that I set these goals and then I don't do anything about them? And when I finally really grasped the concept of knowing your values and making sure that your goals are in alignment with them, that has changed a lot of things for me this year. I feel like I'm making meaningful progress in areas of my life that are really important to me that I haven't made progress in before. So I really want you guys to get a sense of this too, if this is something that you struggle with, or if you're not in touch with your values right now. I think it's going to be amazing for you to get that. So Dr. Judy makes that point, just first driving home the importance of knowing your values. And then she talks a little bit about some tools you can use to discover your core values if you don't already know them. I don't personally love what she uses. I find it to be kind of like dry and academic and scientific. That could really work for some people. And I'll at least like briefly go over it. She talks about something called a values card sort, which is a tool in psychology. Basically, on pages 218 to 219, if you have the book, this is a list of 33 common core values and with brief definitions of what they are. So there are words like knowledge, mastery, order, persistence, community, health, 33 of those. The values card sort is where you're supposed to either like print these out, write them on cards, or either just like make 3 columns, and you do most important, medium importance, least important. And then you're supposed to try to evenly distribute 11 in each category, what's most important personally to you of all of the values. And of course there's no right or wrong answer. They don't have like moral weights to them. It's just trying to figure out what's important to you as an individual. So, and I think that's a good starting point if you just really have not like thought about this and you kind of are lost as to where to start. But the problem that I have with it is just that's a lot of words, that's a lot of values. It's kind of overwhelming to me personally. So I really love the tools that I shared with you guys in the last post from Tanya Dalton. She wrote a book called The Joy of Missing Out, and that is one of the most impactful books I have read. It took me kind of a long time to read it. It's kind of a deep read. It's not as like dense and academic as this, but it is just very deep. So I highly, highly recommend it. And especially the part where she talks about digging into your values. Using that book and kind of her framework is how I figured out my core values earlier this year. So I just wanted to give a couple of tips for like, if you have this book and you're like looking through this exercise, but you're still kind of like, I don't know about my values. Here's some other ways to think about it. You can, one of the things that she says in the book and Tanya Dalton says in the resources I gave you is think about an event or a time in your life when you felt really connected to your purpose, you felt really fulfilled, you felt really happy in the sense of like, I like where my life is going. And just think about the reasons why. Like, what were you doing? What were your relationships like? What things in your life are bringing you that fulfillment. Those things are probably very tied to your core values. Another thing for me that I think was helpful is just thinking about like what in my life right now brings me a lot of joy. And on the flip side, like what areas of my life or what specific things in my life, if they're not going well, does that really severely impact me? So I'm going to try to tie it to a concrete example just so you can grab onto it a little bit more. So my core values, I have 6. And I feel like 6 is plenty. I feel like 6 or less is kind of how many you should strive to keep in mind at one time. Like if I was trying to keep track of 11, that would be really hard. And Dr. Judy does talk about narrowing it down to try to focus on 2 or 3 at a time in later exercises in the chapter. But for me, 6 is good. And I have this really silly acronym that helps me remember them, which doesn't mean anything, but it's KFC, like the restaurant chain, and then BOG, B-O-G, because those are the first letters of each one of mine. So my core values are kindness, faith, connection, beauty, order, and growth. And I'll just kind of rattle off. Like, obviously my number one is faith, because I'm a follower of the Christian faith. That's a huge part of my life. It has been for several years. So that's just kind of the lens through which I like see everything. It's a big factor in how I make all my decisions and how I set my goals. So faith was an easy one for me to think of. Another one, order, was really easy for me to come to, because I just thrive when there is a sense of order, like in my life and in my home. And I really struggle when there's not. Kind of figuring out like, what do I struggle with when it's absent? That was kind of how I got to order, because when I feel like there is a sense of order in our home, I am just so much more peaceful and just feel so much more like I can focus and accomplish what I need to. So order is one. Beauty is one, because I've always just been really passionate about like decor, design, making spaces beautiful. I feel like that's a really good way to serve both your family and the people that come into your home. And I don't just mean this to be related to home. Like, I think of it in other ways too. Like, when I give a gift, it's really important to me that it's beautiful and it looks like a lot of thought and time went into it to personalize it for the person. That's just a way that really lights me up, in a way that I can serve other people, and something that I really enjoy too. So that's why I chose beauty for one. What else? Hopefully those examples kind of make sense, just to give you an idea of how I arrived at mine. And now I'll talk a little bit about how I use them in goal setting, and how you can hopefully start to do that too, if that's an area where you've been struggling. So, when you know those core values, like now that I've got them in mind, it's a lot easier for me to make decisions and like hold up those values and see like, okay, if I were to do X activity, how does that relate to any of my core values? So starting this book club is a great example. When I thought about starting this book club and I was trying to decide, like, is this what I need to do? Is this a good use of time? I thought about how it would relate to my values, and it relates to a lot of them. It definitely relates to connection, because I love meeting new people, connecting with new people, especially other women who share my passion for growth, which is another value, growth, obviously. Definitely appealed to my sense of order, because I like having the idea of a schedule and an order of how we will do things and move through it together instead of just kind of reading it whenever. So it appealed to order and connection and growth. And so I just thought like, yeah, this is a good idea. So that's one isolated example, but I hope that gives you just a sense of a real life way that can play out. So my computer has stopped recording me, but I think it's the video has stopped, but I think it's still recording. So I hope that you guys are going to get this last part of the video. But anyway, there's more that I could say, but really I just want to summarize by saying it is amazingly clarifying and helpful to know your values. If you don't know them, definitely spend some time thinking about it. Listen to the podcast episode that I put in the last post, and or skim through this chapter if you have the book, and let me know in the comments, do you know what your values are? Or if you don't, where are you in the process of figuring them out? And I'll stop it here for now, and I'm excited to check in next week for our final chapter discussion. Talk to you guys soon.